Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a bit of a quiet week in the world of the Anaheim Ducks. They only played two games, but two pretty interesting games against the Vegas Golden Knights. One loss, one win, but it feels like things are trending in the right direction, Jake. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, this is the most hopeful I think I've been about the Ducks in a long, long time. Don't take that as me saying that I think everything's right, everything's great, everything's rosy, but I think there's a lot of positives to be taken away from this past week, from the two games against Vegas. I think we will probably try to add a little bit of realism to all of it, but I think for the most part, this was a really good series for this Ducks teams, and I think a lot of Ducks fans should be leaving the series with kind of the warm and fuzzies in their stomach.
See, I actually will push back on that a bit.
Okay.
Well, no, because you said that, we'll bring a little bit of realism to it, and we will, but I think it's not one of those, hey, there's a catch when like with the LA and San
No,
Jose games. Like this
that
was kind of like you can almost take it at face value type
the
of
only
performance.
there's one minor catch, I think. One minor catch.
Okay. Okay.
Which is that Vegas didn't have Shea Theodore for one of the games, and there were some some injuries on their blue line that left them a little bit ragged. But for the most part, that's going to happen with any team you play, and so that's why I'm saying a little bit of realism with it.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about the Ducks. They're without Josh Manson. They didn't play Danton Heinen in one game. Uh, they have their own injuries. So yeah, of course, not having Shea Theodore for the Golden Knights, that does make it a little different. But I think this is as close to you can take it as at face value as any performance we've seen this season.
Definitely,
So
completely agree.
funny that I am the positive one right now, and you're the casting doubt.
Shocking.
The hater.
I wasn't casting doubt. I was just simply saying we will add some sort of context to all of this, and that context, in my opinion, is just the injuries on the blue line. But that is a minor one.
You made a minor comment, and I extrapolated it as extremely as I possibly could.
Standard.
That's my role on this show.
Standard.
Is to give you a hard time. Okay. Yeah, so let's just get into the first game if you want to, unless you had something else you wanted to say,
nope.
or I don't know.
Nope.
You're unpredictable sometimes.
I'm very unpredictable. Someone has to be the wild card for this show.
Yeah, we haven't. I feel like it's been a while since you've had like a wild card type moment. You used to have those more often.
We used to do a podcast every single game, which gave me more opportunities to. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I'm also just kind of dilly-dallying right now so I can pull up the actual game report. That's what this is.
I mean, let me think about wild card moments. I mean, the Bob Murray rant I had a game or two ago, or a podcast two ago. That's
you went off
there.
kilter.
That's up
okay.
there. That's up there.
Okay, I have the game report up, so let's just dive right into it. So this was a really tough loss for the Ducks because you can look at it two ways, right? You can look at it as, hey, they got down early, right? They got down 3-1 or 3-0, sorry. And then at one point we're down 4-1. They tie it up to make it 4-4. And then in the dying minutes of the game, in the last 5 minutes, they give up a goal to Zach Whitecloud, and that robs them of the victory. Now, what's interesting about that is that the mindset of this team, Troy Terry after the game talked about how, we can't just be happy that we got close or happy that, that we fought our way back. Like that can't be the standard anymore. And I do find that interesting. And by the way, Troy Terry is just a phenomenal quote because he basically just thinks out loud.
Yeah.
So, and also, I mean, we'll get into the COVID situation about this game after in a little bit, but so what are your thoughts on this game overall, kind of the progression of it, just how things shook out?
So this was actually a really interesting game where this is one of the few games this year where you could say the Ducks, I mean, it's basically the script. I think we're doing kind of an overall view of this game. The script for most of the season was flipped on its head in this game. For most of the season, the way the Ducks have played is they've had to defend, haven't really put shots towards the other team's net, haven't gotten chances towards the other team's net, have had to defend and rely upon brilliant goaltending to bail them out, and they could pick a goal off going the other way. This game was the exact opposite. This game was the Ducks actually were pushing the play. They had the better of the play at 5-on-5 for most of the game, with Vegas kind of pushing it back in the third period a little bit. With granted, I think Vegas being such a good team, that's kind of where that's coming from. But the Ducks were let down in this game by goaltending, and I don't think that's that controversial to say. Vegas didn't get that great of goaltending either from Marc-Andre Fleury, but at the end of the day, this game can come down to goaltending because that's what happened in this one. The Ducks lost by a final score of 5-4, and you could bet Ryan Miller wants a couple of those back. I mean, if you look at just in general at some of the numbers throughout the game, if you're looking at all situations, Ryan Miller should have only given up per expected goal models 2.91 goals against it in all situations.
Situations. Okay.
All situations, and he allowed 5 goals. And so I mean that's the difference.
Actually, just to distill that down even further, he let in all 5 goals at 5-on-5, and the expected goals at 5-on-5 against the Ducks was 1.98. So that discrepancy gets even worse for Ryan Miller there. Yeah, I don't think it's weird because he made some really fantastic saves in this game. You know, sliding across in the first period, making that ridiculous glove save on a 2-on-1. But I don't know.
He let in some soft goals also. I mean, I don't think there's really any way around it that some of the goals they let in were ones that if you were to ask him about it, he's going to say that he's got to make that save, and he's going to make that save most nights. And that is at the end of the day. Granted, you can make all of these brilliant saves. If you're letting in goals, you're letting in goals. Whether you're letting in the easy one or the hard one. If the goals are going in, you're letting your team down if you're not saving what you as much as you should. And go ahead.
One critique I would have though is that even though the Ducks carried the play in the first 2 periods, they didn't necessarily translate that into a ton of shot quality. You know, some of their goals did come off of significantly dangerous opportunities. But like, for example, in the first period, they had 15 shot attempts at 5-on-5, but only one of those was a high danger chance. And so, whereas Vegas had 5, and you can kind of see where that's coming from. But yeah, I mean, overall, like this is still like, you got to think about where this team is coming from.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the season, they were getting skated out of the building by the Vegas Golden Knights. And just to even hold even, I know that someone like Troy Terry might not want to think about it that way, but that's still a moral victory for this team.
And this was a team, I mean, let's just get into the game slightly. They went down 3-0 in this game. And they went down 3-0. They were significantly down. And I think the positive is it almost felt like this may be a St. Louis game all over again. Now, granted, not as early as that game was when they went down in that one. But this felt like that all over again. And then kind of the Ducks got a quick goal after the third goal from Vegas, and they were able to really kind of build some momentum off of that, get some momentum going the other direction. And that was Isac Lundestrom's goal, I believe. That he scored with a really nice shot in the slot that, honestly, I didn't think Isac Lundestrom had that type of shot.
That he had that in his bag?
Yeah, I really honestly didn't. Now, granted, these guys make the NHL. They all have that type of caliber of shot, I think, if given the time and space. I just didn't expect him to be able to make that at the NHL level. And so really impressive there. And the Ducks were able to build a lot of momentum in this game kind of off of that. And what we saw a lot was, I mean, and then obviously Vegas scored again, which this was the goal I thought personally was going to be the backbreaker for the Ducks to go down 4-1 in this game, because the Ducks had done a really good job up until that 4th goal. They had been controlling play. They had been basically doing everything you would want in the game. And then to have one against you, and I believe that this was the soft one that kind of tipped or that knuckled, and Miller really probably would want back.
That is a backbreaker, or can be.
And the fact that they were able to find goals after that, the third period, on the back of, I mean, gotta give, we've been hard on Dallas Eakins so far this year. I think no doubt we would both agree with that. But give credit to him. He shuffled up the lines and put something together this game that I think you and I would both agree was something more closer to an optimal lineup for this Ducks team.
Yeah.
And the top line of Ryan Getzlaf, Adam Henrique, and Troy Terry just went off in that third period and were really generating chances. And if you look at expected goal totals, they had the most expected goal totals of a line for this Ducks team. And they really capitalized on that in the third period and really put the puck in the back of the net, including with the power play strike, with a brilliant kind of mental awareness from Ryan Getzlaf to get to the front of the net. And one of the few times this season we've seen movement away from the puck to get to some soft areas. And they were a big driver of the fact that the Ducks came back and scored 3 goals to tie this thing up 4-4. And so even though, like you said, Troy Terry's going to say this isn't good enough for us, we want to be doing better, I'd argue that we hadn't seen this type of game from the Ducks to hold serve, to be this close to a team that is one of the top teams in the league. And so, while yes, they wanted to win this game, obviously. And I think that from a fan perspective, you want to hear your players say that they're not satisfied with anything less than a win.
Well,
but
it's a healthy mindset for the players to have as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the better way to put it is, if you're a player, it's like, we shouldn't be happy with a loss ever.
Yeah.
But the process was there, and if we continue that process, we know we're going to get those results. And I think that's probably the mindset that you have to take out of this game as a fan, that the process was very good. And you and I talk about this a lot with the Ducks and with analytics overall, and why we look at them is you're looking for the process. And that's the key thing here. It's a result versus process situation. Some people, a lot of mainstream media, will only look at the results, and that's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And what you and I try to look at with these numbers is, what's the process to get to that result? Is that process repeatable? Is that result going to keep coming because that process is there? And so while they may have been getting some good results in the beginning of the year, the process was crap. And that's putting it lightly.
And they even admitted that.
Yeah.
Again, Troy Terry said that.
Yeah.
And was bailing them out.
And so in this game, the positive that you can take is, while the result wasn't good, the process was really good. And against a really good Vegas team, and this was with Shea Theodore for half the game or over half the game or something like that. Yeah. And so there's a lot of positives to take away from this game as a fan. And this was
to me. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and the positive takeaway from this game versus the other one is, the other game, I think there's a lot of defensive positives. I think in this game, there's a lot of offensive positives that you can look at for this team. And the fact that they found goals when they've struggled to find goals. I mean, this was the first time they've scored 4 goals this season. And I think they've only scored 3 goals I think this was the first time they scored 3 goals on a goalie this season, if I'm remembering correctly. I think every other 3-goal game that they've had was against the 3rd goal was an empty net goal.
Empty netter.
If I'm wrong, people in the Twitch chat, please correct me. But I believe that this was the first time they scored 3+ goals against a goalie, and so that definitely is a good sign. And they were it wasn't like they were coming unlucky. They were getting their chances.
No, and that's, to me, the other biggest positive, and it's something that we talked a bit about last week, but I think it became even more true in this game and in the subsequent game, is that the Ducks' young players, I mean, really kind of made this happen for the most part. I mean, Isac Lundestrom with his snipe, but even setting up that goal, Max Comtois with the really nice, gain the zone with control of the puck, stop up, let the play develop, hit the trailer, and then Lundestrom is the one that finishes that play off. Like, that's the Ducks' future right there. Those are, I mean, that's their idealized future is their young players making those kind of contributions. And then, I mean, we talk so much about Troy Terry on this show because he is a bit of an analytics kind of, I don't want to say darling, because he's not perfect in that regard, but he's a player who I think analytics favor a little bit more than maybe the eye test might. In this game, he had the eye test going big time. I mean, look at his goal in the 3rd period. The patience to stick handle out of a tight spot and into a more dangerous position, something that even the broadcast, the prime ticket broadcast has talked a lot about, is that he's getting better at finding the better shot, making a good shot into a great shot. And in that one just goes upstairs on Fleury. And then after that, the goal to get the Ducks even closer, where he wins a battle behind the net and sets up Adam Henrique. Like, this is the future of the franchise, and in front of our eyes, this is what the franchise wanted to see this season, is them to go from guys who, hey, look, we're going to be patient with them, we're going to, live with their mistakes, to now being contributors. And that's what we saw in this game. And then really, to kind of top it all off, you saw the Ducks power play get a goal for the 4th goal with Ricard Raquel with a really pretty feed to Ryan Getzlaf, which, by the way, not a point shot, not a rebound, just a nice kind of setup play. So there's a ton to take away from this game. But to me, I think the biggest kind of macro takeaway is the fact that the young players were some of the big drivers of the success.
Yeah, and I think the Isac Lundestrom line looked okay. I think in this game, I think they had a much better game in the second game. One of the big things that we haven't talked about yet, Derek Grant was scratched. This was the first game that Derek Grant, I think, was healthy for, and got, I mean, there's no other way to put it. He got healthy scratched. Yep. And that I think is a very bold move by Dallas Eakins. I mean, It wasn't, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago when he was using Derek Grant as the matchup center against Nathan McKinnon. And this is a guy that Bob Murray signed to a 3-year deal in the summer. Granted, only 1.5 mil, but you don't sign a guy to a 3-year deal unless you're planning on using him a fair amount. And the fact that Dallas Eakins has the confidence, and I think as much as we've criticized him, we need to give him credit here to scratch that guy and healthy scratch him. Like, this is not a kid that he's healthy scratching. This is not Adam Henrique where it's dumb and we're going to criticize him for it. This is a guy that, quite frankly, wasn't really improving this lineup that much and didn't bring something to this lineup that I think was that influential. And now, granted, he played the next game. We'll get into that a little bit more because I actually am okay with that. But to do that, I think, is a sign, and a sign that he understands that maybe the fourth line is better off with David Backes there. That David Backes brings more to the table than Derek Grant does. And I think that that's a healthy sign from the coaching staff to do that.
So I actually slightly disagree with that.
Okay.
Mainly, I don't think it's as much of a them not thinking he's good enough as much as it is faith in the guys that were in the lineup, because Grant had been out of the lineup, here and there. And I don't think, typically Dallas Eakins will say when a guy is scratched that he's dealing with something, and there was nothing about that. So they definitely scratched him, no doubt. But I think it's the fact that David Backes has been playing really well, the fact that Isac Lundestrom has been playing really well, that Ryan Getzlaf was coming back, and Sam Steele is untouchable, well, at least in that game. And so it's just those other guys kind of forced his hand, because look, when teams are winning, coaches will stick with it. They're very loath to make changes. And I think that's also a big part of it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the only thing is he had him playing on the top line against San Jose.
But Getzlaf was hurt in that game.
No, I agree, but it's not normal for a guy to be plopped into the top line when he gets healthy and then be healthy scratched instead of just being pushed down into the line.
And Grant wasn't good in that game.
No, which
could be part of it. Yeah.
My point is that I was fully expecting, when Ryan Getzlaf was healthy, for Derek Grant to slide back in on that fourth line, and Nicolas Deslauriers or Carter Rowney or David Backes to all come, one of those guys to come out of the lineup, and Derek Grant slide down there. So the fact that he didn't was a pretty good idea. So
No, I think because we don't know exactly what went into it, we have to take into consideration all possible angles. And I think from whatever angle you look at it, I am more willing to believe it's more about the guys who were in there, but I don't have any issues believing that it's also just because he doesn't really see Derek Grant as much of a vital part of this lineup as he maybe used to. But that being said, he played in the next game. So
yeah, but okay, so let's have the conversation, because I think that this is a perfect kind of
wait. So are we done talking about this game? Just to clarify.
Yeah, unless you have anything else to add, I think that this was a really good game for the Ducks. I think they were let down by some poor goaltending by Ryan Miller. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of positives to take away. Yes, they didn't win, which sucks, but I think from a perspective, if you're a fan not expecting this team to make the playoffs, like me, I think that this is the exact type of game that you're looking for. You're not necessarily caring. Just so everyone knows, this is exactly where I'm at. I don't care if they win or lose a game, honestly, because I don't fully expect this team to make the playoffs. And if they do to make a run or do anything good, all I really care about right now is giving me a good process. Give me a good process where I can see something there that then once Trevor Zegras gets inserted into this lineup as we move forward. No, but in the years coming, and with changes and growth and things like that in the multiple years, that there's something within this lineup that can be built upon, can be improved to build a solid team that is going to become a contender. And that's what I'm personally looking for out of each and every one of these games. And I think in this game, there was something there.
Well, you want to know another positive that was actually taken away from this game?
Sure.
Thomas Nosek in the game. Positive COVID test.
Real quick before we get there, I want to ask you this, because this affected the second game. Sam Steele. I think it's time that we have a bit of the conversation about Sam Steele. We've done it a bit now, but he's just not been good enough. I don't think there's any other way to put it, right?
Yeah. So if you want to talk about that, I have no issues. So yeah, they scratched him in the next game, and I don't think it was purely just a matter of, hey, we want to get other guys in the lineup, because Derek Grant got into the lineup, Max Jones got into the lineup. So they were working guys in. But I mean, if the coaching staff was fully confident in Sam Steele, they would probably be leaving him in there. And especially, if you listen to some of Dallas Aiken's comments about Sam Steele in the last couple of weeks, they're not necessarily glowing reviews, saying how he's passing up too many opportunities. I mean, I think we talked about this in the last pod. So there's clearly a little dissatisfaction there with where he's at. And so I think scratching him was the right move, because I do think he is at the point where the game might seem a little too fast for him, especially without the
Yep.
puck. Now, of course, I think it's worth mentioning that in that game, his line had decent numbers. I mean, they 55.5 shot attempt percentage, not as great from an expected goals for percentage. So I don't think he played horribly in that game. He had moments, though, defensive lapses that definitely hurt the Ducks. So overall, I am very curious what's going to happen in the Ducks' next game, moving forward, because look, Sam Steele hasn't been good this season. He has not shown. Not only has he not shown the kind of progress that Terry and Comtois have, and Lundestrom for that matter, I don't think I'm sorry if this sounds really harsh, but I don't think he's shown any progress.
Yeah.
He had maybe 2-3 good games to start the season. And keep in mind, those games didn't actually result in strong underlying numbers for the most part. So I just don't know what you do with him at this point. What is the next step?
I mean, for me, the next step with him is he should go down to the AHL. I think this is a situation where this is something that he's needed, and I think he needed last year, and I think he needs it more than any of the other guys that necessarily got sent down. Max Jones, maybe we could argue he needs it, but I think Sam Steele needs it way more than Troy Terry did last year, and yet Sam Steele is locked into a roster spot beyond all belief, and so Sam Steele really just needs to go down. He needs to work on his game, and I think that I looked at it today because I actually wrote the 5 takeaways from the Vegas series today, and it will go up tomorrow for anyone listening to this on Monday. It's going up today. But Sam Steele, if you look at his numbers, he's been a drag on basically everything. Or basically on every player. I think Jakob Silfverberg is maybe the only player in the Ducks organization so far as a forward that hasn't seen his Corsi for or expected goals for percentage go down when playing with Sam Steele, and it's marginal. It's a 1% increase, so it's basically the same. And so my takeaway from that is just Jakob Silfverberg's good, but
this could be just variance.
Yeah, but so kind of having said all that, is every player is better without Steele than with him, and I think that there is something you can take away from that Sam Steele just isn't there right now and needs that time. And I think sending him down, I'm honestly shocked they didn't send him down this past weekend. The Gulls played 2 games. It's on Saturday, or played on Saturday and today on Sunday. And they could have very easily gotten him into a game to get him some work, because he hasn't played since Tuesday. He got Thursday off, and the Ducks are off till Monday. I'm not quite sure why they didn't, and that kind of leads me to believe that he probably is going to be back in the lineup, I guess, on Monday, might be my guess off of that. But it would have been a perfect opportunity to get him a game on Saturday. And the Ducks are in town, the Gulls are in town. There was no travel needed. He would go to Irvine, play a game. He's waiver exempt still, so they could do it. It's just, I don't know. That's one thing that's shocking.
That could indicate more that this they're not quite where you're at in terms of their evaluation of him. Like that scratch could have just been more of a rest thing. It could have been more of a, might be less performance based than we might be thinking here. Regardless of what they are thinking, I do think that his performances have not been good this season. And the bigger issue, outside of the fact that he hasn't really shown any progress, is that he's 23. Now, someone might say, oh, 23 is still really young. He's got plenty of career ahead of him. And he does. But these are, like, for prospects, these are the years where you should start seeing some growth. You should start seeing some kind of progression in their skill set. And with guys like Terry and Comtois and even Lundestrom, we're seeing that in full force this season.
Yeah.
Like, and it's beyond, even just the scoring. I mean, Comtois is still not a perfect player.
No.
But you can at least see certain elements of his game that have gotten better. And he is much younger than Steele, right? And with Terry, they're about the same age, and he's definitely showing some all-around improvement. So that's the bigger concern, is that he was a first round draft pick. Now, a late first round draft pick, so maybe more of a project. But the point is, there, like, I just don't know what, because if you're sending him down to the AHL as a 23-year-old, hey, maybe that helps him. Maybe that helps him spur his career onward. But it's just, it's not the best sign. It's not the best symptom of what's going on with his development. And I don't know if it is just a matter of, hey, he needs to get down there, play in a slower paced league, just kind of get his rhythm back and then come up to the NHL, or if it's just a matter of like, he might just need to be a guy who's lower in the lineup, or he's just not of the caliber. I don't really know. And maybe we're being too, we're rushing our conclusions too much, but we've gotten to see a fair bit of Sam Steele. He played a full year last year, and this season he's been a lock in the lineup up until that second game.
Yeah.
So it's concerning. I mean, I've heard people say that maybe he should be a winger, that maybe that's the issue, is that center is just too much for him. And I have time for that argument, because I do think that the very short stints where he's been on the wing, he's looked a bit more comfortable. I just really think that, without having really dived that deeply into his game, the defensive aspect of playing center just seems beyond him right now in the NHL.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what does he bring on the wing though? Like,
well, because he does have playmaking vision,
yes.
and I think on the wing he has shown an ability to kind of feed that puck into the slot. But I mean, it's still kind of it's still not at this high rate. It's not at this like level where you get this big benefit from putting him there. Really putting him at the wing to me is less about accentuating what he does well and just minimizing what he doesn't do well right now, because what he doesn't do well is really bringing the Ducks down, as you pointed out.
Yeah, but definitely. So, I think that, I'm kind of, this is all circling back to Sam Steele getting scratched. I think they made the right decision scratching him. I think it was something that was a long time coming. I'm just curious to see where they go from here with it, because they played a pretty good game, and we'll get to that in a sec. But do you want to jump into it about the Thomas Nosek situation?
Well, I just want to round out by saying that I think part of the complication right now for Steele is that Isac Lundestrom is playing well, and that as long as Lundestrom, I don't know anymore. I really don't. As long as he's playing well, that's going to make it tough for Sam Steele to get consistent looks, because I don't think they want to take out Backus. I don't think that they love taking out Grant. And of course, Getzlaf's not coming out. And hey, by the way, Adam Henrique is a center, even though he's playing on the wing right now. So they've got a bit of a logjam at center, and it does feel like Sam Steele is kind of the odd man out, or at least he just hasn't been good enough to be an every night player. Like I don't think that that's how he should be used moving forward. Now, this is tough, because there are two views on this. One is that, hey, if this were a development type season, more like last year, yeah, you leave him in every game. You live with the mistakes. You let him learn the job on the fly. But the Ducks want to be in the playoffs. They are in a playoff position right now. I think they have the 4th seed. And if he is not up to snuff, if there are guys that are better, I think you kind of have to go with that, right? You can't, like, the development on the fly phase for this team, they've said it's over, right? Or at least it's not what it used to be. So
they're saying it's over, but yeah.
Well, my point is, if you do believe that you are a playoff team this season and that is your only goal, then, or at least it's like 90% of your goal and 10% of that is development, I don't think that really helps Sam Steele's case, because he is more of a development type player. Whereas Terry, Comtois and Lundestrom right now, they're guys who are actually helping the results as well.
Yeah.
So difficult situation. But yeah, so let's talk about the what happened with Nosek, and then we can probably take a little quick break, and then we'll talk about that game overall. So Nosek tested positive, had to leave the game. I think it was in the first or second period. And then the next day, that was when we heard about the NHL revamping all of its COVID protocols. I believe that they administered another round of tests to both teams before playing that game. And then they ended up playing, despite, 24 hours after a guy who's confirmed positive. So the optics of that are pretty tough.
Yeah. So basically, I think this is what they decided to do. And I'll add something at the end to it. But I guess their decision was, all of the players within the game would get tested on what would have been Wednesday. And the reason why the test came back in the middle of the game is they were all just doing PCR tests, which take about, I don't know, anywhere from 16 to 18 hours, I think is what they're saying from the NHL for their standard amount of time to get a PCR test result back. And so they didn't get back the results for the Vegas team, I think, until midway through the game. And that was when they were triggered they were told Nosek tested positive, which my question is, you shouldn't be playing games until you get your test results back. But regardless, the additional thing was they added rapid PCR tests on the day of the game in addition to their standard PCR testing procedure. Rapid PCR test gets you a result right away. The other thing what they did was they added some additional protocols for being able to sit in the rooms and KN95 masks and things like that. Basically, they enhanced their protocols.
They've caught up to reality.
Probably these are all things that they should have done in the first place. The fact that the fact that you enhance protocols on something like this is insane to me. This should have been done in the first place. But regardless, they're there. Good on them now for updating it. This should have been there in the first place. They should be criticized for that. But the question I have with all of this is, thankfully, it seems as if nobody has it and got it from Thomas Nosek. And I think that's a good sign.
Still no one from either team added to the COVID protocol list since that game.
Which is a very good sign, because my concern at the point in time was typically people say to wait about 5 days after potential exposure to get tested.
We're about 3.5 days in now.
I think we're at 5. We're at 5 because it was
Tuesday. The game was on Thursday?
No, the game was Tuesday.
The Nosek game was Tuesday. Right. The first game was Tuesday.
So we're at 5 days right now. And so
it could be that they're in the clear. I think you still got to wait a couple days, but that is a positive sign.
Yes. And so basically, if anyone got infected, it takes about 5 days for it to fully hit your system and show up on a positive test. And so that's kind of what we were waiting for and why I personally would not have played the game. And my question here is, how can the NHL, though, consider that they're taking contact tracing? Seriously, when every single player on the ice was in contact with Nosek. And that's why, to me, it's a situation where they probably should have just postponed the game. They played it on Thursday. It seems as if there haven't been any positive tests, which is thankfully the case.
Well, there haven't been.
Yeah, sorry.
Correct. We would know.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. There hasn't been any spread is probably the better way to put it. So, Thursday's game was in doubt. They ended up playing, and it seems like it's okay right now.
Yeah, so we just still got to wait and see. I don't think that the right decision was made. I really don't think there was any harm in postponing that game.
Agreed.
You could also argue that if there was any damage done, it was already done in the first game. So what's another game, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Well, let's before we talk about the next game, should we talk about our friends at Mack Weldon?
Yes. So there are a lot of things that you'd probably like to leave behind in 2020. One of the most important being your old underwear drawer. If you're rolling into the new year with the same bunching, chafing, and uncomfortable underwear, then you've got to check out Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon is an essential piece of my daily routine. So, Felix, you and I both have gotten a fair amount of Mack Weldon products over the last little bit. Both things that they've provided to us for some use. And also, you and I have both gone out of our way to get additional Mack Weldon product on our own dime because we were so satisfied with the product. I personally am the biggest fan in the world of their Ace sweatpants. Their Ace sweatpants, I think, are my favorite thing that they have. They're the comfiest sweats I think I've ever owned. If you're like me and for whatever reason like things being a little bit slimmer, a little bit trimmer, fitting a little bit tighter, these sweats are for you. These are my favorite sweats that I own, and I now have 2 pairs of them, and I could own 4 or 5 and wear a different one, or 7. Let's go with that. Let's go with 7 and wear a different Ace sweatpant every single day of the week, and I'd be happy. What are your thoughts on the Ace? Because you have one, you have them also.
Yeah, I have 2 pairs now, and I do love them because they're really, like, they keep you warm, when it's colder at night. Like right now, here in California, it is pretty cold at night. And so they're perfect for that. But even during the day, if it's a little warmer, you don't feel like you're heating up either, which is nice. They have a good temperature regulation. They're really comfortable, and they don't look like kind of schleppy, sweatpants either. You don't necessarily look downtrodden wearing them. You actually can still look pretty pretty put together. The product that I really love is the radius pants, because I mean, they're the jack of all trades, especially, I mean, working from home, you can put them on. And for me, like, I put them on and they look kind of like business pants, or, slacks, whatever you call them. And so you feel like, hey, I'm going to work today, even though I'm still at home. But then you can actually still use them for athletic activities. So when I go on my lunch, go work out in my home gym, I can use them and I don't have to change. So I highly, highly recommend those. I have like three pairs at this point, and they have been wonderful.
Yeah. And so in addition to that, and all those different things, you can obviously get underwear from there. They have shirts. They basically have everything to meet kind of whatever the day brings to you. And I am a huge fan. So they also have their Weldon Blue program, which is totally free, a totally free loyalty program. Level 1 gets you free shipping for life. And once you reach level 2 by spending $200, you get 20% off every order for the next year. Mack Weldon wants you to be comfortable, so if you don't like your first pair of underwear from them, you can keep them and they'll still refund you. No questions asked. So for 20% off your order, visit mackweldon.com/CTP and enter the promo code CTP. That's mackweldon.com/CTP, promo code CTP for 20% off. Mack Weldon, reinventing men's basics.
All right. Well, hey, hopefully you guys go over there and grab some, because it is absolutely worth it. Let's talk about that second game.
Real quick, I want to jump in here and give a shout out to people on Twitch who have subscribed, resubbed. So far, we have Lewis X209 resub for 29 months, Science Cat 108 resubbing for 5 months, Dan Grimshaw resubbing for 7 months, Bionic Chris gifted a sub to Realize 92, and Ginger Wolf gifted a sub to M Young. So shout out to all of you for doing that, for resubbing, for gifting subs. If you want to help support the show, that's one way to go about doing it. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, absolutely. That is huge, man. What do you say, 29 months?
29 months for Lewis. That has to be about when we started doing this thing.
That is Twitch. A long time. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that 1-0 game that the Ducks actually won, with Sam Steele being scratched. So this was this was an interesting game, because it did feel like the Ducks were really controlling the flow of play the entire way through. But then if you look at the numbers, that wasn't quite the case.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily the case. I think that if you look at expected goal numbers, it's going to be a little bit different than Corsi and shot attempt numbers that you'll find. If you're looking at expected goal numbers, I think that's where the Ducks really thrived in this game. And so even though Vegas got a fair amount of shot attempts and got a fair amount more, 57 to 51 in all situations, for Vegas, 49 to 44, where the Ducks really did better was limiting those chances against. This wasn't necessarily a high chance affair. This was a game that in all situations, so including power plays, because I think at the end of the day, that's a good thing to look at with expected goals. Expected goals were 1.88 to 1.36 in all situations. So this wasn't necessarily a high chance, high event affair. This was one where both teams were limiting each other. But I think the Ducks did a good job of keeping Vegas to the outside, and that's where they really thrived in this game, was limiting Vegas's chances. And this was probably John Gibson's easiest shutout of the season, easy-est 1-0 shutout I've ever seen from him. And it's one where, what was it, a week or two ago, the Ducks put up that stat about 1-0 shutouts, and I was criticizing it. This is one where you would actually say, yeah, that's about right. That's where this game probably should have been. 1-0, 1-1, 2-1. In that range of scores where this game should have ended up. So it's one that I think that I disagree with you. I think that the Ducks actually played a really good game in this one, and the numbers kind of bear that out. Maybe not from a shot perspective, but from a chance perspective, it does.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. I think that overall, even though you could maybe quibble with some of the numbers, I think overall, just watching them playing this game, there was a lot of really good things happening out there. I think the biggest thing to me is how much they limited the Golden Knights' opportunities really until the very end, when the Golden Knights were trying to come back in the game. And, once again, Max Comtois gets a goal in Vegas. And this one was off of a really pretty feed from Ricard Raquel behind the net. He gets it to his backhand, and Comtois just kind of slips into that dead area where there's nobody, that quiet area in the slot, and then just goes far side on Fleury and finishes it off. So, yeah, this was just, this game just felt like the Ducks were playing at a solid level. It felt like, I mean, maybe this is harsh to their earlier performances, but they felt like a real NHL team in this game, just a normal functioning NHL team. And that's huge from where they're coming from.
Here's the biggest positive I actually take away from this game, outside of kind of defensive, playing a really solid defensive game. In the third period, once they got that 1-0 lead, they didn't necessarily turtle. It wasn't, because I think it was game 2 against Vegas, game 2 of the season when they were in Vegas. The Ducks held a 1-0 lead, and they did a pretty good job, honestly, of limiting Vegas's chances. And once Vegas got the goalie pulled, they really started pushing it. But I mean, still at the end of the day, Vegas was getting the majority of the shots in that second game. Whereas in this one, once the Ducks got that 1-0 lead late halfway through the third period, I believe was when it came, they really pushed, and they weren't sitting back. They were pushing the play. They were getting chances, and they held possession in the other team's, in Vegas's zone. And I think that's the biggest positive, because I think as a fan, I don't want to see this team, if they have a 1-0 lead and they're playing a low event type of game, I don't want to see them turtle and specifically then just allow all of these chances against and just hope and pray John Gibson keeps playing a fantastic game. This was a situation where the Ducks pushed the play still, and yes, they gave up some chances going the other way as a result, but that's what you're going to do. You don't want to, when you have a 1-0 lead, you don't want to try to win the game 1-0. You want to push for that second goal. Because if you get that second goal, then it's done basically. With a 2-0 lead late in the game, it's pretty locked in. Obviously, there's chances that goes awry.
But also, in this game, they could have, like, the scoreline doesn't really indicate how many opportunities they could have extended this lead a few times over.
Yes,
and like Ricard Raquel had opportunities. So the scoreline doesn't fully indicate just how well they were really playing, and I think it's not the type of 1-0 win that they were getting in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, Isac Lundestrom realistically should have scored in this game. I mean, this was the game where he had
another feed from Comtois.
Comtois, a great little move on Marc-Andre Fleury, and that's a goal that, I mean, or a shot that Marc-Andre Fleury saves 1 out of every 10 times probably. It's a shot that goes in 9 out of 10 times, and this just happened to be maybe even less likely than that. The one time where Marc-Andre Fleury is able to reach back and pull the puck off the goal line. And it's just a crazy situation. Yeah. And so the Ducks probably should have had a goal before that Comtois one, realistically. And so this was a really good game. And this was one, like we said, Sam Steele out of the lineup. Derek Grant draws in. Granted, didn't have fantastic numbers, but overall, super low event when Derek Grant was on the ice.
That's kind of what he does.
Yeah, super low event.
Max Jones.
0.04 expected goals for, 0.1 expected goals against. Oh yeah, Max Jones drew in for Danton Heinen. Should mention that.
That was a bit odd.
Yes.
That's the one thing I didn't quite get. It could just be a matter of, hey, we have these two guys who are available again, or at least Jones is available again. This is where, like, it's on a back-to-back. These are the guys who seem tired or whatever. Let's just work them in. Like that is kind of how coaches think sometimes. And I think that could be a part of it. They did lose the game before, despite their nice performance. So that can always lead to change. But I would imagine that Danton Heinen will be. I mean, he'll still be a regular. I don't think him being scratched in that game is a sign of more things to come. Whereas I think with Steele, it is a bit more, just because he is in a precarious position now with all of these centers. I mean, Danton Heinen is still very clearly one of the better wingers on this team, and even though they want to get Max Jones reps, you can't leave Danton Heinen off this roster, out of the lineup for very long, because you're shortchanging yourself at that point. So I wouldn't read too much into that, even though I still find it kind of weird.
I completely agree. It's definitely odd for that to happen. So overall, though, this was a good game for the Ducks, and I think that's kind of the big takeaway here for this Ducks team.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess to zoom out, it's two good games in a row against a really good opponent. Even if there were some injuries. So now the Ducks have played 15 games. They're 26.8% of the way through their season. So we kind of have a good feel for who they are at this point.
Last podcast, I believe you asked me, or I asked CJ, or someone asked someone, are the pitchforks still out? After the week against the Kings in San Jose, and whether the pitchforks were still out after kind of the poor performances before that. And I think we all had the same agreement that they played better, but it was against the Sharks and the Kings.
Yep.
And really, these next 2 games would be telling against Vegas to see where this Ducks team actually sits, how they actually are, because they're now playing one of the teams that's the class of the West. And I mean, if
first place team.
exactly, and the Ducks split. And here's the thing: even though yes, they didn't get wins in both games, they split, and there's not going to be many teams that will be able to say they got 2 out of 4 points in Vegas.
They not only split, but they could have won both.
Well, no, and and they played great during it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that kind of this was a test, and I think the Ducks passed this test in flying colors, and I think that that's a positive sign for everyone out there.
Yes. And so I guess the pitchforks can be put away for now.
Yes, I do want to add a little bit of realism to all of this.
Here it comes.
Here it comes.
Ready yourselves.
There are people out there claiming how the Ducks are in the 4th playoff spot right now, and saying
they are.
They are by points.
Yes.
I think we all, and there's a reason why. I think, granted, I think part of his last year, the NHL's added points percentage to the standings page, and that has been done on purpose, just in multiple reasons. In case for whatever reason not every team can play 56 games, they will go by points percentage. I believe they've said that. And the other thing is that you're dealing with teams. The Ducks have played 15 games. Minnesota, who's going to be competing with the Ducks for that 4th and final playoff spot, has played 11.
And Colorado's played 12. Right.
Arizona's played 14, LA San Jose 13. So you're dealing with a lot of games in hand.
But they are tied for 5th in terms of points percentage.
Correct.
So, and I think that that's more reflective of how they've been. Yeah.
Agreed. And I think that that's the key thing here, is that yes, the Ducks are currently sitting 4th, but I would argue they're not technically in a playoff spot right now because of the
You don't want to. Yeah, I think that there's people that are definitely going to be touting that, perhaps even the Ducks themselves. And look, good for them. That's like, you want to draw on that if you're the team that's involved, but just analyzing this from a distance, they're not really the 4th best team in this division right now, but the way they're trending, they're certainly kind of working their way up.
They're trending the right way. They're trending the right way.
I think what we can say pretty definitively is that they're not in the LA San Jose category.
No,
like they're out. They're in the Arizona category.
I think they're in the Arizona category. I would agree with that this year.
They're in that tier. I mean, because to me, in this division, there's about maybe 3 tiers, and they're not in the bottom tier. So that's good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, having kind of said all of that, so real quick, actually, M. Young brings up in our Twitch chat, Milano participated in practice today, so he may be back soon even. So that's another kind of really interesting piece to this all.
I should have brought that up because I tweeted that, but yeah.
Damn, you are breaking news and forgetting to bring up on the show.
I broke that. Well, I don't think I broke it, but no one else from the Ducks media cohort tweeted it out. So, but yeah, he's participating in practice, and actually when he was asked if there was any restrictions, John Allers asked him, is there any restrictions? And Dallas Eakins said, well, he didn't have to wear that weird jersey, meaning like the not full participant jersey. And he just doesn't know if he's been cleared yet. So it almost sounds like he didn't want to go far enough to confirm it, but it sounds like he might be really close. So that's good news. Now that does raise the question though.
Where does he go? Who comes in?
What do you do? I mean, because they're playing the best hockey they've played, but I do still think that the best version of this team has Sonny Milano playing at a high level or at a solid level on it. I don't think that they can realistically, I don't want to say keep this up, but they can't leave Milano on the outside looking in. I would expect that they're going to give him more time because they're going well. I mean, Dallas Eakins is head over heels about the way they're playing. Good for him, good for them. But ultimately, he's too good to be. And I mean, you saw when the Ducks were at their very worst, he was one of the few guys who was actually playing well. I mean, despite the fact that we barely saw him, he stood out immediately. And I would imagine that he comes back in. Now, that does raise all sorts of questions with this lineup, though.
Here's what I would do. And let me know if you think differently.
Let's hear it.
Now, granted, whether or not they would do this, who knows? Mm-hmm. Take out Sam Steele, take out Derek Grant, put Adam Henrique back at center, and center Danton Heinen, Jakob Silverberg with Adam Henrique, and put Sonny Milano back with Ryan Getzlaf, and put Sonny Milano, Ryan Getzlaf, Troy Terry.
Yeah, so I think that could definitely be. I mean, I like that. I think that's the thing with this Henrique situation that's kind of interesting is he's got to go back to center at some point. I mean, there's definitely a contingent of people on Twitter that just seem to think he's not a center. He has to be on the wing, but he's paid like a center, if that makes sense. He's paid.
He led the Ducks in points last year as a center.
Yeah, he scored 26 goals last year as a center. So I would imagine that they want him to go back there at some point. But there are guys who are going to be forced out of the lineup once Sonny Milano kind of finds his footing, and that I mean, it's a good problem to have. It is not the where we thought the Ducks would be at this point in time, but I don't have a good read on how the coaching staff is going to navigate that. My guess would be the way that they really hesitated to put Milano in initially would indicate that they're not going to be rushing to put him back in. Okay, this is what I wanted to pull up. So one of my favorite people on Twitter who is replying, replies to my tweets, Rebel Scum at I think it's at Madera Verde 1138. I think he tweeted me the lines.
Oh, yeah, he's a great follow.
Yeah, he tweeted me the lines that I think you just said verbatim. Milano, Getzlaf, Terry, Heinen, Henrique, Silverberg, Comtois, Lundestrom, Raquel, and Delorier back as Rowney. Is that what you just said?
Say that one more time. Sorry, I was looking because
Milano, Getzlaf, Terry. I think that's a line that should happen. Heinen, Henrique, Silverberg.
Yeah.
I know that didn't work great to start the year, but I get this feeling that may work better now. Comtois, Lundestrom, Raquel. I mean, that's potentially their best line right now outside of Henrique, Getzlaf, Terry, and then Delorier back as Rowney. How do you feel about that group?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Is that exactly okay? That's what I figured.
That is exactly what I said. I believe if unless I'm spacing, I believe that's Christian is who that is that tweeted that at you.
Yeah,
let me double check that. Really good person though. Yeah, Christian.
I read that and I was
Shouts to him.
I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But my question though is how willing are they to go that route? Because there are some guys in there like Sam Steele, like Derek Grant, Max Jones, who are left on the sidelines in a pretty significant way there. And that's the thing with the season is that the Ducks want to win. And to win, you have to make some kind of cold, calculating decisions. And I don't know. I am just very curious how these next few weeks are going to go. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe Sam Steele is just going to be the third line center in perpetuity, but I don't know.
Grant's going to be a weird one to see what they do. That's what I'm so interested with because to me, he shouldn't be in the lineup.
As long as Backes is playing well, I think he's going to be a bit of kind of back and forth. To me, the one that is really deciding this, and I've already said this, is Lundestrom, because I think that as long as because if you take him out, it kind of gets a little easier to slot guys. I don't think they were expecting him to break out at center this season. They literally started him at the wing. So if he, maybe starts slowing down, the goals aren't coming, maybe then they put Steele back in and that kind of unlocks things a bit. I don't really know, but this is kind of a subplot that I did not anticipate coming for this team.
I mean,
which is a good thing.
One thing I've thought about is whether they end up scratching like Delorier and playing Grant on the wing or playing Backes on the wing. That's an option that they could potentially do at some point in time if they wanted to. So that's
I just wanted to add to that. There's not really like outside of Grant, Steele, maybe Delorier. I mean, it sucks because he's so beloved, but there's not really many weak links in this lineup right now, at least on the forward end. Like there's not a lot of guys you can just say he's a net negative.
We haven't, by the way, we should mention this because we've done a lot of forward talk today.
We really have. Like, but it is kind of the story.
Well, because they've done a lot of shifting. I would argue that the biggest change here is Dallas Eakins has optimized his lineup in a much better fashion, which you and I talked about, something that he should be doing. And lo and behold, he does it, and they play better. Shocker.
And they get wins.
It's almost like you and I in some or somewhat know what we're talking about. Somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, if they had done the things that we were pushing for, and then those things just blew up, then go ahead and question us. But they've done those things, and those things are working.
Yeah.
But we're on the right track here.
Shattenkirk, Lindholm,
they've been good,
very good. Kevin Shattenkirk's rebounded from what was a pretty poor start to the year, and that pairing of Shattenkirk and Lindholm has
They've
been
been
very solid.
they've been legit good. And the thing is, like, I know that there's a lot of fans that are upset about the fact that, Shattenkirk, look, despite the really good underlying numbers, he definitely has moments where he looks lost or where he makes a big mistake. But what you're more concerned about, I think, is how he looks on balance in the bigger picture.
Yep.
And from that respect, he looks good. I mean, next, him and Lindholm have been a really solid pairing.
I mean, this is why you and I look at the numbers in a sense. Is the numbers kind of give you a snapshot of how he is on the ice as a whole?
Well, it also, because the thing is, when you're watching something, and I think this is maybe where you were going, is that when you're watching a game, you're gonna remember most of the things that gave you an emotional reaction, that evokes some kind of emotion, and you're probably gonna miss some of the smaller stuff.
Yep,
Now,
exactly.
when you look at numbers account for everything, and so it's giving you a clearer view. Now, I don't think you should ignore those moments that evoke some emotion, because those are things you have to account for and solve, like if you're a coach. But it's important to weigh that against the bigger picture. And for Shattenkirk, there are things he can clean up, but on balance, he's been good.
And I think it's important to recognize that maybe you're only remembering one or two plays, and it's not actually like this big deal. Those one or two plays that results in a chance against. If they're costly, you're going to remember it. But if those don't happen actually that often, and on the whole, this person is pushing more play towards the other team's net, and with plays that you aren't necessarily catching with your eyes, or remembering, I guess is probably the better way to put it, that aren't big enough for you to remember, but they're creating chances for your team to go the other direction, and they end up resulting in a goal. It may be a small enough thing where you're not noticing it, but a goal happens because of it. And so,
well, here's also the thing that I think probably plays into the narrative of why some people are down on them. Look at their expected versus actual goals for percentage. So goals for percentage, Lindholm Shattenkirk is the Ducks' worst pairing. They're 44.68. Expected goals for percentage, so just purely in theory what should happen or what's likeliest to happen, they're 53.17. That is a huge disparity. Now, if you look at what happens when they're out there, their expected goals against per 60 it's not the best of the three pairings, but it's second best behind Hutton Larson, and in much tougher minutes. Now, if you look at their on-ice save percentage, they've got the worst of any of these three pairings, but with 88.4 on-ice save percentage. So they're just kind of not getting the bounces, and I don't think it's because they're giving up a ton of quality opportunities. They're not really getting the goaltending, and so it doesn't help that they take penalties. It doesn't help that they have gaffes, but overall, that's been the Ducks' best pairing. My concern is more so the other two pairings. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sorry, I'm just trying to look up some numbers very quickly on these D pairs, just in terms of chances allowed against. So if we're purely looking at high danger chances against, so things coming in the essentially the closest area to the net, which is the slot,
inner slot,
front of the net, all these areas where you really want a goal or a defense pair to do their work. If you look at Shattenkirk and Lindholm, they're going up against the top team's line, or the other team's top line, and they're allowing the second most high danger chance against per 60. So kind of equating it on a per 60 minute basis, they are allowing slightly more at 9.74 than Fowler, Hakanpää 8.08, but Hutton and Larson are allowing the most at 12.73. So even though your eye test may be telling you that Shattenkirk, Lindholm are allowing all these chances, they're really not allowing that much in comparison to the rest of the team, and they are generating by far the most, or they're on the ice for the most high danger chances for it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is the Ducks generate like their expected goals for per 60. I'm looking at Evolving Hockey. When they're on the ice, it's at 2.53. No other Ducks pairing is even at 2.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty stark difference. So they've just been really good. Now, my question is, it's a great story, the Cam Fowler, Yanni Hakanpää situation, but the Ducks don't control play with those two out there. They allow the most expected goals against. They've had the highest, or not the highest, second highest on-ice save percentage. So their goals for percentage gets kind of driven up by that. They're at 52.36, but their expected goals for is at 45.7. So this has kind of become an analytical deep dive. The point is, they're just not. The Ducks are still not getting a ton out of the other two pairings.
Yeah.
Larson and Hutton, just on raw numbers, have actually been better in terms of expected goals than the Hawk and Paul Fowler pairing, but they give up a ton in shot attempts. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah.
It does help that they have one really good pairing. And I mean, the other two pairings aren't terrible. They're not disastrously bad. So I think that is something worth noting. But they're just not getting a ton out of those guys. And I'm kind of curious about why there just hasn't been any movement, because the Ducks blue line has stayed really steady in terms of who's been in the lineup for the last couple of weeks.
For the last 9 games, ever since Ben Hutton came into the lineup, basically.
Yeah, well, it's like Jacob Larson is a fixture, and then there's just no room for like Cody Curran or
Josh Mahura.
Josh
Mahura, I mean, you and I have been
AHL.
watching a lot of the AHL, and we could even talk about that a little bit right now. But Josh Mahura has looked really good, and it's not just offensively. He's looked really good in his own zone also. And I think this Ducks team could really benefit from having a guy like him on them. And I believe it was Scott Wheeler, when he did a deep dive on the Ducks prospects, said it. He's like, I don't know why this guy's not in the Ducks lineup. I just don't know why. He's better than Yanni Hakanpää. He's better than Jacob Larson. He's better than Ben Hutton. Like, Josh Mahura is an NHLer, and it's pretty simple and pretty easy to see that he is that good and should be in the NHL. And if you watch an AHL game, watch a goals game, you will notice it and see it. And so I'm really not quite sure why he's in it. And honestly, I'm really curious. I mean, we've talked about prospects so much on this podcast and when they're going to get a look specifically regarding Trevor Zegras, and we could talk about that. Do the Ducks eventually try to give Jamie Drysdale a look? He's looked really good in the AHL so far.
Yeah, he's point per game in the AHL. I think the bigger thing is that he's looked fine defensively, but I just don't see them breaking up this group right now. I mean, as long as they keep playing well, getting wins, they're probably going to stick with this group. I mean, if you think about it, who's the candidate to come out? I mean, we know that Dallas Eakins loves him some Jacob Larson.
Yeah.
We know that he loves Yanni Hakanpää, and Yanni Hakanpää's played well. Fowler ain't coming out. Hutton, they went out and signed, and Lindholm and Shattenkirk aren't coming out. And who could possibly come in? I mean, Andy Walensky seems to have the leg up on any of the guys you just talked about. So I kind of see this just remaining pretty static.
Yeah, I think realistically, if I had to say, I would say Drysdale doesn't make play in the NHL at all this year. I think he stays in the A the entire year.
And I don't think that that's a terrible thing.
No,
either.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I think with Drysdale, it makes sense. As an 18-year-old, give him time to adjust. I'm just purely looking at this and looking at how he's played, and I'm trying to think about it and say, I think Drysdale's looked better than Jacob Larson has. Now, granted, it's a different level of competition, so who knows if Drysdale would look like that at the NHL level, but it kind of just in the comparison in my own head, Drysdale has looked better. I mean, Mahura's looked better. And so those are the two, if I were looking at the goals, looking for a guy to come in and change it, those are the two I would be looking at. But
yeah, I just don't think that the Ducks are actually dissatisfied with their blue line outside of the top pairing. And I also think that there's just other guys that are ahead of those players.
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
Not happening.
Fair enough.
Sorry, folks.
Fair enough. So
there would have to be an injury. I think if there's an injury, then you can start asking those questions.
Yeah.
Who's available. And also Josh Manson's going to come back at some point.
True. Brendan Gooley.
Yeah.
What happens? Where does Brendan Gooley come into the play here?
Well, there has been some hinting that he may get some looks, whether it's both in San Diego and Anaheim. But I'm curious what they do when Manson comes back, because then that means, like, what do? Do you scratch, is Hakanpää becoming more of a taxi squad guy, or is he consistent on the third pairing? So Manson coming back will shuffle things up a bit.
Yeah,
we'll see.
100%. By the way, Brendan Gooley, I believe, should be able to go to the AHL for a little on a conditioning stint. He won't. I think it's going to be like a 5-game or something like that is how long he'll be able to play in the AHL. He is not waiver exempt, so in order for him to go down to the AHL outside of that conditioning stint, he will need to be put on waivers and clear waivers if they want him to do that. Same thing with the taxi squad. If they want to put him on the taxi squad, they're going to have him clear waivers. So interesting thing to keep an eye on with Brendan Gooley coming up here for the Ducks. So interesting there. Before I jump into kind of the next thing and then we get into questions, want to briefly mention Lucas Dostal's been really good for the goals.
Yep.
And just wanted to mention that you and I are utilizing Instat a little bit this year, and they do some expected goal models for the AHL. And prior to tonight's game, his GSAX I think was about 8. I think he should have allowed 13 goals and has allowed 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
He's been fantastic. And it is interesting just how quickly it's happened that he just walked in from a completely different league and is good right away. And, the Gulls have been playing well, but they're not necessarily this stout defensive team. They do give up some chances. They have had some back and forth games, and he's had to be there. So, yeah, credit to him.
yep. And sorry, actually, a couple more things pop in my head before we get into questions.
Is this about the Gulls?
No. You want to talk about the goals some more?
Well, I mean, I do think it's worth bringing up a bit because they are playing extremely well.
Go for it.
They haven't lost yet, I believe. So
yeah, they're 5-0, and I think I saw the stat or something that they haven't scored the first goal in any single game yet this year.
Yeah, like it's not a perfect situation by any means. Like they're not playing perfect hockey, and I think if you listen to some of their comments, they kind of acknowledge that. But there's a lot of good things happening there, and especially if you're looking at it more from a bigger picture kind of prospect evaluation perspective, then I think you become even more excited because some of the Ducks youngsters have really been at the forefront of what's going well in San Diego. I mean, like you talked about, Josh Mahura has looked really good. I mean, he had the game time goal earlier in the week against Ontario. Even Bo Gru has had really good moments killing penalties, which is kind of something that we thought he could do at the pro level, and he's already showing that. I even think Antoine Morin has looked okay. I still don't know what his upside is, but he's been fine for them. And look, I mean, okay, one more guy before we get to who. Jacob Perreault has been excellent as well.
Yes,
I mean,
he has.
In the game against Ontario that I watched earlier in the week, he had, I think it was 3 consecutive one-timers on the Gulls 4-on-3 power play, just blasting away from that left flank. Now, I do think part of that will have to tone down a bit. He does need to be a little smarter about that shot, but he's taking that shot because he can score on it. It's not just him hacking away trying to get his stats. He is a very dangerous shooter, and his overall game still is good. Of course, it's going to take time, but he's already showing that he can have an impact at the pro level, and that is very impressive.
He's shooting the puck a lot. He's 4th on the team in shots on goal, and the only one outside of the top line for this goals team. Granted, they've been split up and shifted around a little bit over the last couple games, but outside of Zegras, the big 3 for this goals team, Zegras, Carrick, DeLeo, he has the most shots on goal outside of those guys with 12 and 5. And now, granted, Vinny Lettieri has 10 in 2 games, so the shots per game are a little bit different there. But still, Jacob Perreault showing it, and he's set up a couple goals. He has 1 assist so far. I believe it was on Andrew. I think it was Andrew Agazzino scored the goal, or Podorowski. I can't remember. But it was a nice little feed on a 2-on-1 that was ended up being potted. So I think Jacob Perreault's looked really good.
Yeah. So yeah. Now I do want to quickly mention, hey, Trevor Zegras. He still looks great. He's still putting up points. He's still finding ways to contribute. Now there are pockets of time during games where you don't really notice him a ton, but he just has this ability to kind of turn it up a notch when he needs it. And I mean, it's just impressive how seamlessly some of these guys are just translating their game to a higher level.
And I think the one thing with Zegras that I find interesting is you can tell he's thinking the game at a little bit of a different level than his teammates. And I think that is the one negative for him so far, is that if he had people who could think the game on the level that he could and put away the chances that he's giving them, he would have more points than he does right now. He would have more than 5 assists, I would think.
Yes, he would.
And I think that's one thing to mention here is he has 7 points in 5 games. It could be easily 10 points in 5 games if he had guys that were able to put away the chances that he's setting up for them. And so even though you may look at that and say he had 5 points over the first 2 games and now he only has 7, like, is that a downside? Are the Ducks looking at that as a negative? I would say if you watch this game, see the chances he's creating. While yes, there are things that he does need to work on from an offensive perspective, he's just at a different level than basically everyone else on the ice. And
if you look at their line, or the line that he's been on with Carrick, DeLeo, and Zegras, or sorry, that line, they put up a ton of shot attempts. They also give up a ton the other way. but
they're still in the
they have
positive though. I like
yeah,
when I
exactly.
when I was
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like they're still above, but there's just a lot that's going on when they're out there.
yeah, it's high event hockey, which is fun. But
You love
I
that.
love it. So do you? We're gonna ask this question probably every episode now. Do you think Zegras stays in the AHL the whole season?
I think it's looking likelier because of the way that things are going for the Ducks.
I
As long as the Ducks are going well, as long as they don't have injuries, we were talking about it earlier. They have too many guys right now that they need to work into the lineup, and I just don't see how Zegras leapfrogs them. I mean, if the Ducks had shown any indication that they actually want to get him in, I would be more on board with that. But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he gets to the point where he's just been so good in the AHL, and maybe the Ducks start struggling again, and then they go that route. But I think it's decreasing in likelihood.
We're starting to reach a fever pitch with it. Kevin Weeks. It's getting major mainstream media attention. Teemu Selanne,
Yeah.
Kevin Weeks on NHL Network calling the Ducks out for not having him up. Why is he not up? It's getting some major attention from various different people.
Well,
Whether that matters to the Ducks is a whole nother thing. I doubt it does.
The thing is, there's still this narrative surrounding the Ducks that Dallas Eakins has to answer to is the fact that they're not scoring a ton. I mean, even though they got 4 goals against Vegas in the first game, that was the first time this season they had scored, was it 3 or more against a goalie?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the game after that, they only scored 1. So that is still a real concern for this team. Now, they are generating a bit more offense, so that's something to keep track of, to monitor. But look, it's out there that the Ducks want scoring. I mean, Elliot Friedman talked about it. There's murmurs. And so I think that, look, they have the answer in San Diego right now, a guy who can come up and give them instant offense.
Instant offense.
They don't know. The only thing, and I think this is what they are stuck on, is they don't know how that will translate. And they are very fearful of compromising any kind of development from Zegras in doing so. I think it's likelier that we see the Ducks make a trade for an established offensive player than them call up Trevor Zegras.
By the way, Shadow Ops Gaming 13 says Patrick Sharp also said the same thing on NBC Sports Network, that they should be calling up Zegras. So there's people all over.
Look,
I'm just simply stating that this is now becoming more of a mainstream media topic. This isn't a minor thing.
I'm just parroting what I've heard and just telling you, like, that's what's going on.
At what point does the Ducks broadcast mention anything about it?
Oh, that'll never happen.
True. Fair enough.
Like what?
Yeah. No, it was just a thought. Random thought. Okay. All right. So before we get into questions, want to hit 3 topics that I think are of importance. Some of them. Okay. 2 of them have no importance, but they're worth talking about.
Importance. Hey, you mentioned you pronounced the T. It's not something you always do.
There wasn't a T. I did. I said importance.
Importance.
I was saying with a CE. Whatever.
Anyway.
So the first one is Pierre LeBrun reported this week that the NHL is considering changes to the draft lottery system. So the reported changes are basically adjusting the odds because they're basically GMs are pissed about the fact that the Rangers made that jump from 12 to 1.
The GMs are pissed because the changes that they wanted because of being previously pissed are now actually not working out in their favor.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, basically. They want to increase the odds for a team like Detroit to win a top 3 pick because it didn't sit well with them of Detroit finishing 4th. And they want to limit, basically, it's essentially going back to the way it was previously, but with 3 lotteries. So basically want to limit it so you can only move up, I think it's like 4 or 5 draft spots, which is how it used to be. If you won the lottery and you were 9th, you would move up to 4th. And so overall, as a Ducks fan, good with this because it makes it easier for the Ducks to have a better pick.
Yes.
Depending on where they are. And I think logically it makes more sense to me as a fan because I think the worst teams with this current system should be getting the better players in the draft. And so I think it's more logical that way. And I am all for what they're talking about with limiting the amount of times you can pick first overall. You can't pick first overall in back-to-back years. And I think that that's a logical thing, which they're talking about. That if you win the first overall pick, you cannot win it again for another year or 2 or basically something like that. So they're talking about implementing these changes. What are your overall thoughts?
I think that, look, outside of just my own grumbling about how these GMs are kind of acting like kids who just they get what they want and then all of a sudden they realize that's not what they wanted. Anyway, moving past that, which I'm trying my best to.
Yeah.
I do think that makes more sense because the whole point of the lottery, to me, the whole point of the draft is to get the worst teams, like redistribute the talent back to the worst teams. Like, even though I don't necessarily agree with it, that's seems to be the point. And so if you're making it so that even if you tank or even if you're a rebuilding team, you're not even close to guaranteed anything, that's really tough. And I think it just makes more sense that way. I know it's this big philosophical divide. I personally have no issue right now with how things are because look, you're bad. You don't really deserve any favors from anybody. But in the same breath, that is what the system is designed to do. Get those teams back competitive. So I have no issues with it.
Yep. I honestly am fine with just eliminating the lottery system overall.
Okay, well I mean we could go another hour about that.
No need.
So let's not.
Moving on to the other things. There were 2 rumors that popped up this week, and I think they're worth talking about in the sense of just simply saying they're BS and they're not worth really thinking about. There was the one that I believe I can't remember who. I think Jason Greger was one of the people talking about it. About that Ryan Getzlaf is someone that should be moved by the Ducks. And
sorry, go ahead.
That kind of came out of nowhere, I think, this week, and some chatter about that. Here's the thing on Getzlaf and the important factor here. Ryan Getzlaf has a full no move clause.
Yes.
He's made no comments about wanting out. Bob Murray's never mentioned about Getzlaf wanting out. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's not even really worth a conversation.
And if Ryan Getzlaf wanted out, he would have wanted out by now. Like the Ducks have had 2 of the worst seasons in their history the last couple of years. And so there was plenty of opportunities. Like we would know by now if this was a situation that he wanted out of. And instead, publicly, he said the exact opposite. Now, I understand that players are not going to say exactly what they're feeling publicly, but we kind of have to take what they say and give it some degree of importance. And yeah, I mean, every time I go on, different radio shows or podcasts, I always get asked, are they going to move Getzlaf? And the guy doesn't want, like, he's shown no indication he wants to leave. He has a full no move.
Yep.
It's just, I very much doubt it's going to happen. Now, you could ask the other question, which is, should the Ducks consider asking him to waive it, right? Is that, because that's a different conversation, and one that I think you can have. I think that it depends where the season goes. If the Ducks are, kind of they've regressed down to that bottom tier in the division, they're clearly out of it. Look, why wouldn't that be on the table? Why couldn't the Ducks approach Getzlaf and say, look, we've done right by you the entire way through. Could you do us this favor? We'll try to make it work for you as best as we can. We'll get you the contract you want this summer. We'll bring you back. This is a workable situation.
I think at the end of the day, you need to kind of, I guess, weigh the potential return versus what you're doing with Getzlaf leaving, and I think the potential legacy.
Look, do you think it's this like just not kosher thing to do to just broach the topic with him?
No, I think it's worth bringing up to him, but I also
I don't think that should be viewed as an insult.
I think before you even think about doing that as a general manager, I think you at least need to have conversations to see what the return is. Or the return would be just by shooting the shit with someone saying, "Hey, out of curiosity, what do you think you would give me for Getzlaf?" And to at least understand what the return is to see if it's even worth it.
Well, okay, so then let's have that conversation. So what would make it worth it?
I think
is a second round pick worth it?
No,
because to me that's what he gets you.
Yeah, and that's the issue. I don't think it does. I don't think that's personally.
Let's say a second round pick and a prospect.
If the prospect is going to be a nothing prospect though, so no. And here's the thing, and I know this is completely illogical in comparison to my opinions on everything else, and I completely get that. And if I was someone listening to this podcast, I would be holding my feet to the fire on this. And I get that. You're more than welcome to do that to me. I am expecting that result or that from people, but I think there is something to the emotional aspect of him being a one-team player, and that is something that he wants. And here's the thing, and I think this is the critical thing. If that's something that Getzlaf does value, he went out of his way to get a no movement clause. He probably left some money on the table potentially to do it, because that's how typically no movement clauses works. You have to give something up to get one. So Getzlaf did that to get the no move clause. I think if he's made no indication about moving, I don't think it's worth broaching the topic with him. And he's not moving. That's it. And that's where
yeah.
I am with this conversation, honestly, overall about Getzlaf's trade. And that's where kind of I was coming out with it. I don't really think it's a conversation worth having because he has a full no move clause and doesn't want to move as far as we know.
I think that you are definitely a little inconsistent here. Doesn't
That's
mean
fair.
you're wrong.
That's fair.
Doesn't mean you're wrong. I would just view it as, it just depends who is in charge at that point. Like if the Ducks completely reverse course here and are bad and they fire Bob Murray and a new GM comes in, I don't think it's fair for that new GM to say, hey, look, I'm trying to rebuild this thing. We can work on bringing you back, but a second round pick would be nice. Another second rounder would be nice. To me, a second rounder is worth it. If they're not good at that point. So I understand you can't ignore the emotional aspect, but this is a business where people don't give a crap about other people's emotions a lot of the time.
That's totally fair. And most times,
I think there's a way you can do it where it doesn't come off as just completely cold-hearted, you know? Like Brian Getzlaf has to kind of understand that this team is trying to rebuild. Now he may rebut and say, well, look, I haven't said a word. I've just been a good foot soldier this entire way through. And now you're going to pawn me off. That would be kind of a hard thing to hear, but that's also the business. So I don't know.
I completely agree. And majority of the time, like 99.9% of the time, I would agree with you on this. This is the 0.1% of the time where it's the captain. It's the captain. It's the emotional connection, different things like that.
But what if you re-sign him in the summer?
I still,
how much does that change things?
I still personally, this is a personal bias, and I completely admit that. And it's something for me personally. I want to see Getzlaf only have Anaheim next to his name.
Okay.
And I'll admit that is a bias.
Fair enough.
That is something that logically I shouldn't believe.
If he comes back and retires a Duck, that to me the legacy is preserved.
Yeah, I don't know. Sure, I disagree. It's an illogical disagreement though. And
Ryan Getzlaf for Sam Bennett and a second rounder.
Yeah. So all right. So let me the final kind of thing that came up. It came up, I think, today, actually. And so I don't know if you've really seen this. I believe it was Jimmy Murphy, maybe something along those lines, who I'm not the biggest fan of personally, but came up with speculation was how they put it, that John Gibson potentially wants out, that he's hearing that maybe kind of sort of throwing up smoke signals. I don't know how much I fully believe that, but he added that he could see the Penguins potentially moving for John Gibson because of the connection with Brian Burke and Anaheim and the fact that John Gibson's from Pittsburgh and trying to make all these connections. Here's the issue with all of that type of situation. I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that the Ducks should potentially look to move John Gibson in the next couple of years, depending on how Lucas Dostal turns out. They shouldn't do it this year at all. But Pittsburgh isn't the team they should be looking to trade with. The Ducks, if they do trade John Gibson, they should be looking to get an absolute King's ransom for him.
King's ransom, yeah.
King's ransom for him. They should be getting players for the now, high-end prospects, and some picks. This is a guy that I don't know if this is maybe a bit too much, but this is almost equivalent to trading Connor McDavid.
In terms of like wins added, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of the impact on the team. And so this is the issue with the Pittsburgh trade. They have one of the worst prospect pools in the entire league.
And also the issue is like who is so enticing for the Ducks on the Penguins? I mean, if they give you just like a King's ransom of picks, just like their first and second this year, their first and second next year, because there's a potential, like this is the thing, they could get Gibson and the Penguins could still end up being bad.
The likelihood of that's not high, as we've seen, once you get John Gibson, it's hard to stay bad.
Well, the Ducks have been bad this entire way through. They would have they would have been worse, but they still got the 6th overall pick this last draft and the 9th overall the draft.
But they didn't have Crosby and Malkin, even if they are declining.
Yeah, so that's the thing. There is a connection there. And you could cobble that together in a rumor, but I don't think that that's a team that I would want to trade with, just like you said, because I don't think that they have assets that really kind of put the Ducks in this great position. Like, okay, Samuel Poulin, is a good prospect, but
What
is that a guy? Is that a guy that you put into the Ducks system and all of a sudden you feel that much better after giving up Gibson? I don't know. Yeah.
here's the way that Scott Wheeler profiles, and I'm looking at his prospect ranking right now of the Pittsburgh
Mm-hmm.
Penguins. Samuel Poulin is the number one ranked player for the Pittsburgh Penguins system, and
But
he's
he doesn't
basically
project
saying
as a first liner.
he projects
No.
as a third liner. Like, this is a guy that
Yeah.
this is Max Jones.
Yeah.
And so they don't really have this high end prospect, and basically, so their best prospect is a Max Jones type, like, in terms of the ceiling.
And the thing is, that's why I mean, if you were going to do a trade with John Gibson, like, to me, the ideal return is an elite tier offensive prospect and a first round pick and maybe a roster player to make the money work or whatever. But I don't know who, like, that guy doesn't.
Colorado is the only one that really comes to mind right away. But
the
that
thing,
would be
the problem with Colorado, and I've said this before, is I just don't know. Okay, let's say you get Bowen Byram, like, that's great, that's awesome for the Ducks, but that still doesn't fix what I think is the central issue of this franchise, is that lack of scoring touch.
Byram and Newhook.
Yeah, I mean, that's great.
Yeah,
But I would rather have the one guy.
that's
and
fair.
I don't know if he exists.
Yeah, well, that's the issue here. And so here's the thing: I don't necessarily think I would rule out a Gibson trade happening. It's very, very unlikely, especially during the regular season with the money being moved. There's no way. Don't believe the rumor that he's going to Pittsburgh, because
Well, we know that the Ducks. Okay, here's one thing we can't say: we know the Ducks want scoring.
yeah,
So if you trade him to Pittsburgh, maybe you get a roster. Like, maybe the Ducks view this as, we want one of their roster players, like a Gensel or something. I don't know. And but that would be just a disastrous way to go about cashing in on the Gibson chip.
Well, and also, what does Gensel do for you? Like, is Gensel the player you should be getting for John Gibson? No.
No, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if, like, there's a possibility of screwing it up,
Yeah.
big time, if
Yep.
you trade John Gibson. So
Yep. So I'm going to go doubtful there. So that's kind of it for the rumor. So if anyone's in the Twitch chat, if you want to start throwing in some questions, I saw one earlier that we'll get to. But so for those of you watching the YouTube video or the audio version, yes, we do it on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond. If you want to subscribe there, hit subscribe. Or the audio versions on all your favorite audio medium. We do the live stream of the show at twitch.tv/crashthepond, where you can help support the show in a way completely free to you. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime Gaming sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days. Want to give a shout out to Realize92, who also has gifted a sub to Ryro54. So shout out to him for doing that. Shout out to Ryro for now being a subscriber to the show. So if you have questions, start throwing it in the Twitch chat. But we had a question earlier. Alex Galchenyuk was put on waivers today by the Carolina Hurricanes. Any chance the Ducks end up claiming him?
I would say zero.
No chance. No
0%
chance.
chance.
He doesn't improve the team. He adds more to the logjam. Makes no sense.
Yeah, it's
So Lewis X209 says, question, what is the black and white striped doll behind me? It is actually a gift from a good friend of the show, Bonnie. It's a, damn it, ref doll. It's a very Bonnie thing, and I try to have it out for the podcast because it was a gift from her. So I want to have it out. So thank you, Bonnie. You're probably listening to this at some point. M. Young asked, question, with Manson being out and we've seen the same D pairings for the past 4 to 5 games be somewhat successful, would you consider trading Manson now, showing we don't really need him? Because we also still have Mahura and big moving shot Karan waiting for their shot, and that's who they want, or who M. Young wants to see. So do you think Manson's more expendable now?
Well, here's the issue. There's two ways to look at this. One is, on the surface, the way this team sees itself, it's possible that they view him as more expendable because of the way that, kind of the narrative's been about how solid, like, Hakanpää has been and how good the top pairing has been. So it's possible, but by the same token, is that something they should be doing? Because if they want to stay good now, the bottom two pairings aren't playing well enough for me to say, yeah, they can just let go of a guy who, even though he wasn't good to start the season, has historically been a solid NHL defenseman. So I don't know if there's really the justification there. I will say this though, they haven't been terrible without him. They haven't shown that they are just hopeless without him. So for me, I would kind of like if I was in the Ducks position, yes, I would be thinking more about it now, even if the logical basis for it isn't that strong. I just think it might be time to do it. Because now you have the excuse is that we're playing well. We have guys in there. We have a bunch of D men. We need scoring help, right? Let's flip Manson.
Yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, and I'm curious to see who will end up getting a shot eventually if that happens. But Ginger Wolf asked, a lot of the talk on Dostal not being NHL ready hinges on North American ice. Is that really a big deal for goalies?
I mean, it can be. Like the game is different. The game comes at you from different angles. There's less down low play, or the play is going to come at you faster and from maybe more aggressive angles. So yeah, it does make a difference. But we've seen plenty of goalies come over and it just kind of and do well. And I think the reality is if you're a good goalie, you're probably going to be a decent goalie anywhere you go. It's still the same game at the end of the day. Maybe there are some guys who aren't as good and maybe they do better in a slower paced game. But if you're elite like Dostal, you're going to be good wherever you go.
Yep. And the other thing I think on Dostal, I'm probably saying it wrong. That I want to bring up on the fact of the North American ice. He was playing in Finland the last 2 years, and the key thing on Finland is they don't play on Olympic size sheets. They play on a bit of a hybrid between North American and Olympic. Yeah. It's right in between the two. So maybe that's actually helped because I believe probably when he was in the Czech Republic, that's where Dostal's from, right? I'm not going crazy here. But when he was over there, he was playing on Olympic size ice, then made the transition to Finland where it's a smaller sheet, but not as small as North America. So he's probably already used to being able to make that transition. And so it probably feels comfortable for him. So that's kind of one thing that I would keep in mind here and probably is something that's working in his favor. So he's looked insanely good. I honestly wouldn't hate the idea of the Ducks viewing him as their backup next year. I don't know if you agree.
Or their starter.
Wow. Just going for it. No, I could honestly see them like this realistically is probably Ryan Miller's last season, right?
Yeah, it kind of feels like it.
And I'm not necessarily sold on Stolarz being a long-term backup option for this Ducks team.
Well, he's kind of like a stopgap, I would say.
And so I think playing Dostal as the starter for the goals this year, playing in a bunch of games to get him ready for a backup role next year, I think is a good way to view it. And so
I think what realistically happens is he gets 2 years of starter AHL duty because I think Stolarz is on a 2-year deal.
He had to be on he's on a 2-year deal. He had to be for
the expansion. Draft. Yeah. So I think he maybe becomes the backup next year once Miller retires, assuming Miller retires. Yeah. So that might be what the Ducks should want anyways for Miller to retire. So we'll see. Right.
So let's end with this question. Final one, then we will get on out of here. And also everyone watching this on Twitch,
I think we have 2 questions.
We have 2? I see 1.
I see a question about Shane Wright.
Oh, yeah. I was going to skip that one because, Shadow Ops Gaming, I do not know anything about Shane Wright.
Well, I do.
Oh, you do? Well, then never mind. We have 2 questions. But real quick, I want to mention this. We did an interview earlier on in the week with Julie Stewart-Binks. It was awesome. But for those of you watching on Twitch, I know some of you just come here for the podcast. We didn't live stream that. Our interviews, we don't live stream. But I will play the YouTube video here after we're done streaming so everyone here can stay and watch it. So here we go. So Shadow Ops Gaming said, if the Ducks win the lottery next year and draft Shane Wright, what would that type of player bring for Anaheim?
Yeah, so Shane Wright is in the kind of, I believe he's in the generational talent type category, or at least very close to it. So that's kind of what you get if you draft him, is a prospect who immediately kind of revitalizes everything. And he's not in the hockey prospecting database yet, so I can't pull him up there. But everything about him is that he's already, I think he went over to play in Sweden at a pro level already. During when things were shut down in Canada. So he's really good.
Isn't Brad Lambert also in the conversation of being the first overall? Is that the player I'm thinking of right now? Who had a really good World Junior?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know. My draft knowledge is not at its peak performance right
No,
now.
no, especially
So
not for the 2022 draft.
yeah.
So, all right, let's end with this one. Then, Ryro54 said, question, is it possible that Maher will leave the Ducks since he's hardly being used? So, real quick, let me look up his contract situation.
I
But
think he's a RFA this summer.
yes, but let me see if he's going to play in enough games for the Ducks to maintain his rights. If you don't play in enough NHL games, I believe that you potentially are able to walk depending on different situations. So let me check in on that real quick to see if he could potentially fall under that situation. But yeah, with Josh Maher, the other key thing is this summer he's expansion draft eligible.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
do you think he's a Duck next year?
Well, it's hard to say because I don't know what kind of maneuvering, uh, you know, the Ducks are going to do leading up to the expansion draft. But look, we've talked about it a lot how the Seattle Kraken, they're an analytically inclined franchise, and when Mahura has played in the NHL, he's had good underlying numbers. He's been good by the eye test as well, and he does feel a bit undervalued in this franchise right now. So it's possible that he gets picked up by Seattle.
Yeah. So I don't believe he actually will meet that. I believe what I'm thinking of is a Group 6 UFA, and the player has to be 25 years of age. And so Mahura is not old enough for that type of thing. So he will, this is his ELC though. So when he finishes it, he will not have arbitration rights, I believe. So
Okay.
he will just be a straight RFA this upcoming summer.
Okay.
So, yep. So that will do it for tonight. I don't know if you have
Wow.
anything else you want to add for this show, but this is a good one.
Yeah, this was fun. I think we covered a lot of ground. I think if we forgot anything or didn't mention something, I'm sorry. There was a lot to talk about this week, and we try to kind of capture it all. I'm pretty sure that with Shane Wright, I said something that actually doesn't apply to him, it applies to someone else. But whatever, he's still really good. That's all that matters. That's all that needs to be said there. Um, so yeah, let's just kind of get out of here. Thanks everybody for listening. A few different ways that you can. Oh, sorry, I was thinking of Connor Bedard. That's who I was thinking of, Connor Bedard. But Shane Wright is also very good. Bedard is the one who went over to play in Sweden. Okay, without that was bugging me. So yeah, if you have been enjoying our show, if there's if you kind of want more out of this, or if you just want to show some support, well, we've got a really great option for you. Head on over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/crash the pond. We give you 3 tiers there of support. So for $1 a month, you get access to our patrons only Discord chat, and that is where we I mean, it's taken a life of its own, which I think is awesome. People are in there discussing what's going on with the Ducks, the NHL, and some really high level discourse is going on. Guys, I mean, the people in there are really trying to just kind of sort everything out, and it can also be lighthearted and fun. You kind of just get access to this cool community of hardcore hockey fans, and even if you're not a hardcore hockey fan and you just want to learn, I think that it's a great place to do it. And for a dollar a month, there's worse ways to spend a dollar. Now for $5, you get access to that. But you also get access to our bonus episodes, and we're actually recording one tomorrow. So if you want to get it on that, I would recommend it. Or this week.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tomorrow we're doing something else, which I'll get to. So in those bonus episodes, like for example, the one coming up, we're going to be talking about just a deep dive into the Ducks and how they performed at the quarter mark of the season, because that is something that we don't have quite as much time to do on this show. That's the type of episodes that we do, deeper dives into bigger topics. But we also kind of, if you enjoy the banter of the regular show, there is a bit more of that as well. We're a little more unfiltered on that show. We kind of, a little more humor going on. And so I think if you enjoy what we do here, you'll really enjoy those bonus episodes. Now, there is a third tier. $15 a month, you get access to the bonus episodes, the Discord chat, but you also get access to, we do 2 watch-alongs a month. So essentially what we'll do, we pick out the dates, we work with you guys on that, and then we do basically an alternative broadcast as the game is going on, a Ducks game is going on. So you get to hear our commentary, our analysis as the game is going on. So you get, I think, more insight into the matchups, into analytics as the game is happening, different kind of more detailed breakdowns, and maybe a little more lightheartedness, also some maybe just a different tone than you might get on the Ducks broadcast. So that's for $15 a month. Now, for all of this, you do save 10% if you pay annually. So you don't necessarily have to do a monthly deal either. So that's at patreon.com/crashthepond. And we highly appreciate that people have been supporting us the entire way through here. And for anyone who jumps on board, we'll be happy to have you. Now, if you don't want to be spending money right now, totally understandable. There's still definitely some ways that you can support us with no cost. If you go to Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a rating and a review, and those go a very long way. They help us climb those charts, and we actually got a new review last week. We make sure to read them on the show, and this is a really easy one, but really straightforward. You kind of love to see that. The title of the review is Noise, like Noice, nice. 5-star review. This podcast is nice. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that
Noise.
Right. And that's from not necessarily a suited for work username. So I'm not going to repeat it here, but thank you for that username that we can't repeat.
Thank you. I'm happy to know our podcast is nice.
Yes, exactly. I would figure that you would like that. That's kind of it up your alley.
Yep.
So yeah, that's at Apple Podcasts. If you're not on Apple, no problem. You can check us out on Spotify. We are there. We are on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and also turn on your notifications so you know when the new videos are going up. If you kind of enjoy listening to podcasts in video format, then I think that Jake will upload the Twitch stream there. So we have you covered. If you want to get a little swag, a little merch, I recommend heading over to crashthepond.com/shop. If you like our logo, well, we've got it on a t-shirt now. We've got it on hoodies, and they're really comfortable. They fit really well. I have the black t-shirt with the eggplant and jade logo. So yes, we are actually doing what the Ducks are too afraid to do. We incorporate the eggplant and jade. We love and appreciate it. So we have eggplant and jade. We also have the orange motif. So if you're more of a fan of the current look, well, hey, we've got you covered there. Or you can have both. Why not? But you're supporting our show. You get a cool logo that's got the Honda Center arches, or the arch in front with palm trees and hockey sticks. It's good. And that's at crashthepond.com/shop. Make sure you're tuning in to crashthepond.com throughout the week. We've got articles going up. Jake has got his 5 takeaways. We're doing that after every series, giving you some different pieces of information, some data points that we notice during the different mini-series throughout the season. We've got recaps going up every game. And make sure to check that out on social media. That's where we post everything, at Crash the Pond on Twitter, Crash the Pond on Facebook. Jake is on Twitter at Reindeer Games 91. Good follow there. And I am on Twitter at Felix_Sicard. So that will do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week.
Bye.